Still got a few people coming in, but that's okay. We can get started. So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, When Compliance Isn't Accessible, Why Passing WCAG Doesn't Mean Your Product Works for Everyone. My name is Charlii Parker, and I'm the Senior Inclusive Research Consultant at Intopia. My work focuses on helping teams move beyond compliance to design and test with real people, making sure digital experiences are truly usable and inclusive for everyone. I'll be your host today, guiding the conversation and doing my best to keep us on track. Before we dive in, a quick bit of housekeeping. Today's session will be or is being recorded, so shout out to the replay crew. And for those of you here live, you are welcome to post questions in the chat at any time. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can during the Q&A. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we are all joining from and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So I'll set the scene for today. A lot of teams focus on WCAG compliance. After all, that's how most of us got here. And as much as I say I don't care about WCAG, it is important, but just passing an audit doesn't mean that your product is truly accessible or usable. And that's where user research comes in. By involving real people, especially people with disability and unique lived experiences in your testing and design, you uncover issues that compliance alone can't catch. There are so many times as a researcher where we will run a project and there will be 25 issues and 2 of them are WCAG compliant issues. The other issues, though, are still barriers to usability for the people that we test with. So today we'll explore why putting people at the center of accessibility is just as important as following standards, or in my opinion, more important. And to help us unpack all of this, I'm joined by 2 amazing guests who bring professional and lived perspectives to us today. So first up, I have Doug Fogg. Doug is the Product Accessibility Lead at Australia Post, reimagining how large organisations design and deliver digital services so that inclusion is not an afterthought, but a foundation. His work connects strategy and practice, embedding accessibility into culture, capability, and technology. Doug's vision is simple: a future where accessible design is the standard and every interaction, online or offline, works for everyone. And that's an amazing vision. I was at an accessibility event earlier this week and someone quoted that they just want to be able to do things without calling up, having to let people know, send out an email, give reference that they're coming. People just want to be able to do things the same way everybody else does. So thank you and welcome, Doug. And joining us as well is Ben Moxey. Ben is the Emerging Technology and Accessibility Manager at Guide Dogs New South Wales ACT and friend of Intopia Connect, driving the adoption of technologies that support people with low vision or blindness and ensuring high accessibility standards across the organisation. Ben has extensive experience assessing and teaching blindness-related assistive technology and is totally blind himself. This everyday practical exposure, combined with professional expertise and a slightly obsessive interest, has enabled him to provide unique accessibility consultation that goes beyond official standards. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Now, we'll dive in. We have got a lot to get through. I've got a lot of questions. We may not get through them all, and we want to allow people to ask questions as well. But I know that this is a subject that you're both really passionate about. So we'll jump straight into it. I'll start with you, Doug. What made Australia Post realise that WCAG compliance alone wasn't enough?
So we kind of realised pretty early that, checking the WCAG boxes wasn't going to do, just the bare minimum. So we wanted to go like a little bit further, and we wanted to make sure that we test and put it through to customers with lived experiences. Making it a little bit easier for them to use our products. So and audits are not really like 100% AA compliant. So we just decided that testing with people with disability is something that we want to kind of push a little bit more. To give you like a good example, so our main webpage has the track widget right in the top, and that's like the most used section. And that page was, WCAG compliant, but it took a user using a screen reader like 50 tabs to actually get to that section, which is the most used section on our website. So it was WCAG compliant, but it was not user friendly at all. So yeah, that's why we kind of like pushed things to be a little bit better than just making it compliant.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm sure, Ben, you've been on websites like that where just to do a simple task, you've had to do a lot of exploring and hunting around just to find a fairly important item. What's the difference, Ben, between a compliant product and a usable one for you?
Yeah, I mean, you've given me a pretty easy one there, Charlie, and Doug's helped me out with that great example. The compliance basically means that you've got a well-meaning development team who have designed according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. The big issue with that is that one set of developers will have a different interpretation of the guidelines to the next. And to give you a bit of an idea of just how much some of these criteria are scrutinized or interpreted differently, there's websites out there where you've got very long-term and very reputable accessibility experts, and they're still debating, the different criteria. So you can quickly see how you're going to get different results over time. And then if they have got compliance, who have they gotten that compliance from? How reputable is the accessibility company that's actually done that's analysed that product for them? So usable basically means that at the end of the day, if I sit down in front of it, being totally blind with the screen reader, or you've got someone who can only use a keyboard, you've got someone who's using a pointing device, etc., they can use the product without getting confused. They know where they are, they can get where they need to go, they can read what they want to read. So I think it's pretty clear cut there. It's just you need to be able to do what you want to do on that site or that product.
Yeah, agree 100%. And that's something that I always push. I had looking at some issues raised in a recent project that we did, and got some feedback, and someone said, should we give that recommendation? It's a fairly standard pattern. And it's fairly standard and well known. And it's like, if it's standard and well known, does it make it good? And that's the thing I always ask. So Doug, how did you go about, and this is something that we get every time I do any kind of talk, any kind of presentation, or talk to a new group of people, how did you go about getting exec buy-in to include people with disability in research? It's probably the hottest question that we get. And did you face any specific challenges?
So we did have those challenges, but I think we're quite mature when it comes to accessibility from a business perspective. But that's we still have room for improvement. But I think where we kind of, I guess we have a really good employee resource group. We also have a few good initiatives where we have the mentor program where I actually was part of that program, and I mentored Paul Graham, our CEO, on accessibility and digital accessibility. So I think that was quite helpful. But we also have our company values, which are we call TIES, which stands for Trust, Inclusivity, Empowerment, and Safety. And when your key values are inclusivity, we kind of want to make sure that those products and services are inclusive for all Australians, because Australia Post is everyone in this country. Everyone is one of our customers. So yeah, you got to have someone in your corner as well. You got to have a senior executive that wants to make sure that accessibility is pushed to the forefront, and that those people are sometimes who will have a disability themselves, or have someone in their family that has a disability or something like that, and that will kind of make those people kind of push the digital accessibility a little bit further than someone who wouldn't. That, in my opinion. And yeah, and then we also Australia Post is a huge organization, so we need a lot of people to, within the business to make sure that these things happen. And I think that we do have some, heads of and GMs and EGMs and CEOs who want to make sure that that happens. So yeah, that's kind of how we try and push things when it comes to making sure our products and services are accessible.
It sounds like you're in a really fortunate position being in that, I guess that level of maturity where there's some exec buy-in and some
Yeah,
execs that have lived experience or family with lived experience.
yeah,
That's in my experience has been the same whenever we've tried or come into organizations as a consultancy. We get the most buy-in for people who have a personal connection.
that personal connection is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ben, can you share a specific moment where compliance didn't guarantee accessibility for you? And that's probably a bit of a tricky question because, you probably don't check to see if something's got a WCAG certificate before logging on. But if you've got any stories around that.
Look, I'll tell you what, yeah, I can think of one, and this is one that pops up fairly regularly, and it is a bit tricky, I suppose, now that it's about to come out of my mouth, Charlie, because this isn't mentioned in WCAG, okay, but a product can be compliant regarding color contrast. So you've ticked all the right boxes, so to speak. Your color ratios are really good. Contrast is great. You've reached the highest level, the AAA. But in the low vision world, it's very common for people to use color inversion tools. So we've probably got a lot of people on the call today that love using dark mode to take a bit of glare off their screen. So color inversion tools, accessibility specific versions of dark mode, if you like, will make white text. We'll set it so it's white text on a black background, for example. That's one of the most common color schemes that people love in the low vision world. So you'll often get a product where it has met compliance regarding color contrast, and then as soon as the user turns on their accessibility setting to invert the colors to their preference, you find there's a lot of elements that don't invert properly. So you've got all of a sudden graphical elements disappearing into the page. All of a sudden you find text that was a very good contrast before has all of a sudden disappeared. So it can be avoided if you're designing carefully. And without getting too technical, I believe that, and I should preface, so I'm not a developer, but basically you should aim to style free text using CSS, and that way you can, most of the time, let's be honest, it still needs testing, of course, but you'll probably find that results are quite favorable if you've got people using color inversion tools. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good example.
I agree. And it's something that we see often, where people come and test with us and they have a product and we test with a low vision user and it works with their magnification, things reflow properly, everything works. But as soon as we get a tester or a participant who has color inversion or specific colors, we do tend to lose elements on the page and it makes things difficult. So agree is something that's often overlooked.
That kind of reminds me of a kiosk that we were working on where it kind of works for people at a certain height. And I'm in a wheelchair and I saw something completely different because of the angle of the screen. It wouldn't have been picked up unless we actually did proper testing on something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I did some testing on an ATM and it was in-person testing and we had wheelchair users and I was looking at the screen and it was, to me, black and yellow. And one of our wheelchair users went, the white text or black text on the orange background is really difficult to read. And I was looking at it going, okay. And then I sat down and I looked up, and because of the way the screen sat and because of the way the person looked up at the screen, it was orange and something that we hadn't considered at all. And that's really the importance of getting real people into test, because we kind of look at the obvious things and people have so much lived experience that's their daily life that we don't even consider because we just, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Doug, have you got an example of a product or feature that did pass audits? You mentioned the tracking. Is there any other features that passed audits but still caused issues for users that you got feedback on?
Yeah. So fortunately with my position, I have a direct conduit to our contact center. And we had a customer and kind of complain about a certain form. And she had so much frustration trying to get through to this to kind of say, well, why the postie didn't leave the package or something like that. And so that form was, 100% WCAG 2.1 at the time compliant. So that all passed, everything was great, but the customer still was lost when it came to where they were in the form. So I feel like forms, I don't think that everything needs to be tested for people with lived experiences. Everything needs to kind of like go through all the standard WCAG checks and, screen readers, all that sort of stuff. But sometimes you don't need to have, you know, people user testing, for instance, on certain things. But I think that when it comes to complex things like forms, signups, those sorts of things, I feel like you're going to need to have someone who's going to be using that every day and trying to, get them through from start to finish. And I think that's pretty important. And I think that's kind of a good example of what I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And such a great way of getting feedback. It's another question that we get asked is from a business point of view, how do they find out what people can't use and where the issues are? So it's really good that you've got a direct link to where people are giving feedback and that it gets to you, because quite often I think customers feel that their feedback falls into a black hole, never to be seen again. So
No, I definitely look at all the feedback, and I'll look at all the accessibility, disability type of issues that come along.
it's such a great resource, and it's a free resource for any organization to go through their customer feedback.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's also another good buy-in for leaders to see that if we've done some research in the past where we explained there was we did some testing on the postage assessment calculator, and the person was so frustrated. We had them on video, and she just said, I hate going into the post office, but I'd rather go into the post office than have to listen to this form tell me what and just like bounce me around. So yeah, and senior leaders saw that feedback, and that was also quite a good buy-in, I guess, for them to see. Seeing that direct impact is good.
Yeah, agreed. Quite often you really don't understand how someone's struggling until you actually sit
Absolutely.
and watch them struggle. And people's, lived experience is different. I often say that, there's no screen reader university. Ben might disagree since he teaches that.
There
but
definitely isn't a screen reader university, Charlie. Definitely not. Yeah.
And everyone learns differently, and everyone
Yeah.
has their own workarounds. And I find that people who work in professional settings who aren't screen reader users know how to get through things using technically efficient ways of working, because they've been taught how to use the tool, where the number of screen readers that I know were basically given the tool and gone, off you go. Work it out. I don't know if that was your experience, Ben, but
probably not the place to admit it, Charlie, but I never had any formal screen reader testing. I'm self-taught. So
I think most real users are, and their way of doing things and way of getting around things isn't standard by the book. So when we build things that are standard by the book, we lose a lot of people through the cracks, and that's not taking into account, some people like self Ben, technically proficient and really keen on technology, and other people who absolutely hate it. People are people, and some people love tech, some people hate it, and if it's your only way of accessing things, it then makes it even more difficult.
Probably a really good time, Charlie, to highlight the importance of just making sure a product is usable at the beginner level. So you shouldn't have to be a screen reader expert to be able to navigate a product well. In fact, you've probably heard me say many times, if you've got to be a screen reader wizard, if you are blind to use a product or an app, then in my view, that app is not accessible. Another quick thing I'll mention, and I'll let you get on. Sorry,
no, you're
shut
good.
me up if you need to. I think it's good to highlight the importance too of having human contact always available. So here at Guide Dogs, we always insist, even if we've got a form, we've done our due diligence, we've tested it for accessibility with a range of users, it may be going out by email. I'm always very insistent here of having a telephone number provided in the actual email. So there's not even the barrier of having to go to the website to try and find our contact details. Some other means to do it with a human, because no matter how accessible your products are, you're always going to come across people. You think about someone who's been sighted their entire life and all of a sudden they've lost their vision in their 80s and they've never been a computer user. Like, imagine that challenge, trying to adapt to doing a computer, not only using a computer that you've never really had exposure to before, but doing it blind. Some people never quite get there, understandably, regardless of accessibility. So it's important to have those human contact ways as well.
Absolutely agree there. Thank you. Now, Ben, when you participate in research, what makes a session feel respectful and valuable to you?
Charlie, I think it's just when somebody, you and I, there's no secret. I think you mentioned I'm part of Intopia Connect, so I've done these sessions directly with you before. And if I can use you as an example, I like the way you just sit back, you let me do it in my way. Like you said, I use the screen reader techniques that I'm used to. You're patient, so you're not rushing me through the process. So I think those factors are very important. And I know there's probably many times where you're watching people run through this and you're almost itching, and I've had these experiences too. I'd love to tell the person that this particular keystroke exists with your screen reader so you can move past that more quickly, but you bite your tongue because, like you said, everyone does it in their own way. And as I mentioned before, you shouldn't have to know all the ins and outs of a screen reader to be able to use a product. So letting people do things at their own time, being respectful of the feedback you're being provided, even though in your mind, there's times when I have had feedback come in, and as a very long-term screen reader user, I know that the issue that person's experiencing is actually because they're struggling with the screen reader itself. It's not related to accessibility. But nevertheless, all that sort of stuff is still important to take on board. So yeah, they're the things I'll probably highlight.
Yeah, thank you. And can I ask you, if you don't mind, I know I get a lot of researchers and designers who are a little bit afraid of working with people with disability because they don't want to say the wrong thing, or if they're working with someone like yourself, Ben, they say, oh, take a look at this page, and then go, oh my goodness, I've just said take a look and I've upset everybody, and now I just want to leave the session and go home and cry. What's your take on that? And what's your
immediately I say just that using everyday terms like that. Did you watch this movie last night? Did you take a look at this? I use them myself all the time. It's just part of everyday language. It's the intent behind it that's important. So likewise, there's so many terms related to blindness. For example, in America, they still say visually impaired. Over here, it's a term that people have found somewhat offensive for quite a long time. You hear people say, well, there's nothing wrong with the way I look. It's my eyes that don't work properly. So therefore, they went to vision impaired. There's people that don't like the term impaired. We could go on forever. I think most of the time it's the intent. If you have good intent, and you're going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes, and I am blind and have been for about 25 years. So like, it's very much about the intent, but don't feel like you need to trip over your words, and just apologize. If someone says, oh, that really offends me, just say, how can I communicate better?
Thank you. That's an excellent perspective, and I hope that our observers on the webinar, or our watchers, viewers on the webinar, will take that away and use it to start including people more and realizing that they're human. People with disability are human. I always say people with disability are people, and you get some lovely ones and you get some not so lovely ones, because we're all just people and we all have good and bad days as well.
Charlie, you and I have talked about this before. Like, often if you get someone who's really offended, even after you've apologized, and chances are it's not even so much what's come out of your mouth. There's probably more going on in their own life. So as long as the intent is good.
Yeah, thank you. Doug, how has inclusive research changed business priorities or outcomes that you've seen?
I think it's made a big difference. Once we started running more user research sessions, we kind of had the teams stopped thinking about guessing what users wanted, and they started asking, what do users want? So I think that's quite quite a good takeaway there. And then, you know, you were helping out with our new pin pad payment device. So you would know how you know important that is. So that project's a really large project that we're working on and a huge undertaking. Um, and we had to do user research on that, right? So, and then with your feedback and, you know, with all the customer feedback and all that sort of stuff, it really was a fundamental kind of uh, you know, catalyst to take us to take that product and go, right, we're so confident that this is going to work for every Australian. So it gives us as a team to like understand that this is going to be good for everyone. We're not going to, you know, create something that's not going to work. I mean, I'll go back to the CommBank you know, payment thing a few years back where people were, you know, sued about, for not having voice assisted payments and stuff to read out certain things. So, you know, we've learned from those sorts of things, and I think that's kind of pushed our business priorities and the outcomes to make sure that when we do test, it's going to be, you know, really, you know, it's going to work for everyone. And I think that's kind of, yeah, that's about it, I guess.
Excellent. And did you notice, like, we recently did do a project with you, and it was
Yeah.
fantastic because it was an in-person project, and we love those because most of what we do is remote. Within your team, did you notice that people's perspectives changed once they viewed those sessions?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I said it earlier, it's showing how customers interact with something it has huge impact.
Mm.
So yeah, having customers actually interact with something like that, yeah, shows the business that yeah, it's important. It's high on the list. It's something that we need to also champion and say like, look, we're very proud of this, you know, product, and yeah, we're proud of it and we'll use it.
It's really interesting, isn't it, when you come into these projects with a new tool or a new device,
Yeah.
new piece of software, and you have a perceived idea of what will work and what doesn't, and then you test those hypotheses in user
Mhm.
testing and go, oh, well, okay, what I thought everyone would hate, no one hated,
Yeah.
and what I thought everyone would love is the feature that
Mm.
everybody wants us to change and get rid of.
Yeah. And little things that we just giving that device to someone to use. You know, we figured out that the power button was too close to the screen, and it was one click or one tap would turn the device off. So it had to be a long
Oh,
press. So we,
yeah.
you know, those are the sort of things that we kind of got from that, and I think that's changed our priorities for certain, yeah, business decisions, and it's yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
and these are really the things that will only come out in user research. I'm sure
Absolutely.
when you all got the device and you all picked it up and played with it, and you know, it's probably not something that ever came up in conversation until you handed it to someone who wasn't aware of those things
Yeah.
or to avoid those things.
And we also were quite lucky to feed back to the supplier and say like the buttons on the back with the actual keypad buttons didn't have enough contrast for the numbers. So people wouldn't be able to see that. So yeah, that's also fed back to them, and then that's going to get retooling and certain things like that. And that was just like, here, take this device. It's got, you know, accessibility baked in, but it actually didn't. And
Mhm.
we had to test it for them to actually go, right, this is what we need to do.
It's so true. And I'm gonna run off script a bit here, and I'll bring you into this one as well, Ben, because we were talking about this earlier. When you have a product from a supplier, how important is it for you that the supplier is open to taking your feedback regarding accessibility? Ben and I were talking about some software previously where it was being implemented, and the supplier was really happy to take on advice and, you know, has fixed things. And it sounds like, Doug, your supplier has taken things on board and not
Yeah.
gone, well, this is how we built it and that's how you get to use it. For both of you, how important is that from an organization's point of view with procurement and picking up new software or new hardware and things like that.
Ben, you want to go?
Sure, Doug. I'll be quick. So look here at Guide Dogs. Basically, in more recent years, we've got good accessible procurement processes in place. And long story short, we won't take on a product if they're willing. Let's say there is a product that meets what we need here at the organisation, but it's not yet fully accessible. So we've got people, and I know I've talked about blindness a lot today. Forgive me, everyone, but I guess it makes sense being that I'm from Guide Dogs and I am blind. But I'll stick with blindness for now. If we've got people here that can't use every feature that they need to in the workplace, that developer or that product person is willing to work with us, then we'll still consider it. We'll make sure we've got appropriate clauses in the contract and so on if it doesn't pan out, but we will still be pragmatic and provided they're willing to work with us. So it's hugely important, Charlie. And I can tell you now, in the blind and low vision community, things become famous. Products become absolutely famous. Word gets around. Blindness-related tech podcasts and so on. I mean, I guess Apple's a classic example. When iPhones hit the scene, or just when smartphones thought we were screwed. Okay, so the iPhone came along, and what a lot of people don't know is I think people think that Apple just baked that accessibility out of the goodness of their heart. It actually was because of lawsuits, etc. But nevertheless, they did a really good job of it. And all of a sudden, we could use one of these flat pieces of glass. So they've sort of become famous. So that brand recognition, the fact that they care, there's a social impact measurement there. It can be super valuable. Sorry, Doug, I said I was going to be short, and I definitely wasn't.
No, that's all good. So we have policies in place where certain products have to meet a certain standard for us from procurement side. And our procurement team is quite rigorous when it comes to certain things like that. But yeah, we'll try and not, I guess we won't do what I think what Ben's doing. You know, we'll make sure that the product and services is, if they got it on the roadmap to go 2.2, then yes, that's cool. But if they're at 2.1 compliant or something, for instance, then and they have it on their roadmap to upgrade to 2.2, then yes, we'll definitely allow that. But yeah, we have a lot of products and services that we need to try and take off the shelf. And we'd rather buy over build at the moment, so we're not. We got those policies in place for a reason.
Yeah. And that does bring us back to what we're talking about, in that all organizations, people developing software and hardware for anybody to use, really needs to consider their user testing as well.
Absolutely.
To make sure that it works. So when it does get sent out, it's as accessible as possible. Now, Ben, what advice would you give teams about engaging participants with disability? It's something, again, that I hear a lot, is that, people want to test and they're willing to test, but where do they find people? How do they engage people?
Oh, Charlie, look, I mean, you set me up here to say Intopia Connect, haven't you? Because I think it's a very good place to start. So, well, look, immediately I would say value people's time. So be willing to, if you want to engage people with various disabilities, with various user needs to come and test your products, expect that there will be financial compensation of some sort. So it may well be in the form of like a gift card that they can spend anywhere, but ideally just payment, direct payment, so they can use that to pay bills and that sort of thing like everyone else. That's one of the key things I would say straight off the bat, Charlie, because I think there has been a bit of a perception before, with no malice intended, but they just think, okay, people will think, oh, well, we'll just get a bunch of people in the blind and low vision community to come and test this product, and they'll just be happy to do it. These people have lives too. They may be employed, they've got families, they've got plans. So you've got to respect their time. I'd say that's number one.
Absolutely. And they have, lived experience and a skill set that, should be compensated for. I couldn't imagine the amount of hours that you've used up learning how to use a screen reader, and then being able to tell people what's actually going on and, what's working and what's not working. It's a skill set that does deserve to be compensated, which is really, really important. And I think there is a little bit of a sense of, people with disability should be advocating for themselves and going out there and telling people what's wrong, because nobody knows what's wrong if they don't tell them. But I think there's also a fatigue on the behalf of the disability community, again, that I've heard about recently, is that they want to be appreciated for their time, and this is an everyday thing. They're constantly telling not just one organization, but 15 organizations that they have touch points with on the daily what's not working for them. You could spend your whole day just complaining to organizations and businesses about what's not working for you. So,
Charlii, I'm so glad you mentioned the fatigue component, because it's very, very real. And I would say to everyone on the call, do yourselves a favor and get people on board early in the piece. So don't leave it to when you've already built your product and then bring people in at the end, because we're talking trying to retrofit is a massive deal. But if you've included people with lived experience to collaborate with your developers or your product designers from the beginning, it's going to make a massive difference for you. Way more cost efficient. You'll end up with a better product. And just remember that when something's more accessible, it generally benefits everyone in the community. So like a classic example, if you think about to some of those times when you might have a situational disability, you've gone to the shopping centre, you've left your glasses at home and you can't read the small print. Okay, so if that print in the shopping centre on those labels can be made a little bit bigger, if the colour contrast can be made a bit better, it's improved the situation for everyone in the whole community.
Yeah,
Ben,
I 100% agree.
I want to echo, sorry, Charlii, I just wanted to echo that.
Yeah.
I think that, once a team is done with something, it's so hard for them to go back and retrofit something or fix something. It's starting from the beginning is just the most important thing. You nailed that one.
Yeah, and the cost of retrofitting from a business perspective, and for accessibility, it's always a really tricky one as well, because accessibility is not cheap. Doing the testing isn't cheap. Doing user research isn't cheap. And so from an exec point of view, they've just spent all of this money making this thing accessible, to find out when it hits the shelves that it's not accessible. And then there's almost a little bit of annoyance at the disability community of, look, we did this for you. We made it compliant. We followed all the rules. We got a certificate. We got a certificate that says that we're compliant. Why are you people still not happy? And it's sort of it becomes a bit of a thorn in the side for everybody, because compliance over usability. It's compliant, you should just be happy, whereas every other product touch point is, we want people to enjoy using it, we want to make it easy for people, we want them to come back, but it seems like the disability community is, we want you to be happy that it's compliant. That's just my little rant.
Agreed.
So Doug, for teams just getting started, what's a simple step that they can take towards inclusive research?
Like you said, I mean, it is expensive, but I mean, you just have to start somewhere, right? You don't have to have a huge budget. You can, do a formal study. You can just do, one or two people, and then have them use assistive technologies, just like they would every day, and then kind of just share that with the team, and I think that'll have some impact. And just document what you learn, share it, share clips, insights, that sort of thing within your teams, and then it'll become part of like everyone's awareness. And also, like, a lot of teams won't have that many people that can do it. So that's when, like, why we have a relationship with Intopia. It is easy for for us to kind of approach you and say, listen, can you help us out with this testing or something? So you can do it in-house, absolutely. So yeah, if you didn't want to get started, that's kind of how I would approach things.
Excellent. And just with that, you mentioned sharing things, sharing what you've learned. One thing that I've seen a lot is, teams are fluid, people get moved on, they leave organizations. How do you maintain that knowledge within the organization so it doesn't leave with, the one person who's the inclusive accessibility expert on the team?
So I have a toolkit. which is on our SharePoint site, and I put everything there. I've got, like for all the developers, the designers, that sort of thing. Our everything's been updated to 2.2 now. We've got all our previous audits that we've done, so people can use those and download them. So there's a repository of something. So if I wasn't around, then there's all this information that people can use and share, and yeah, it's all there.
Excellent. It sounds like you've got a great resource there too.
Mm.
Yeah.
And Ben, if you could tell designers or developers one thing before they begin testing, you have mentioned start early. What else would you suggest?
Start early, Charlie. That was my answer. I've already used it. I
You
think
don't
it's
get to hear it
becoming
twice.
I think it's becoming pretty obvious to everybody that you should bake this stuff in right from the very beginning. So have a plan on how you're going to make it accessible. If you don't have the resources, the expertise, get somebody on board at the early stages, somebody reputable. I won't mention names, but I am on a webinar with Intopia, so you can read into that if you like. Make sure you're getting your information from good. I guess I just use the word reputable, and I'll stick with that. I'll just say now there are a lot of people out there in the accessibility space who are very well meaning, but the expertise aren't quite there. Next, there was one more point I wanted to make, Charlie, and now it's disappeared out of my mind. Yes, I just wanted to quickly mention, kind of back on what Doug said before. I love the fact that Doug mentioned that just make a start as well. So don't let yourself get overwhelmed, because let's be honest, this topic can be really complex and is very involved. Make a start somewhere. Don't do that analysis paralysis by analysis thing. Go and look at some of the resources out there, and even just from a small point of view, you might start making your documents more accessible in-house, or anything you're sending external. You might start thinking about having a more accessible font and font size related to your emails and so on. So those small steps can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say start early, what are your suggestions on starting early? Is it having a chat to people, having focus groups? What kind of things? What's your idea of start early? How would you like that to be done?
Like number one, like I said, have the expertise there, because the lived experience testing and the expertise are equally important. So you've got to have the people that know how to implement the behind the scenes when they're developing, and then you're getting the feedback from the people who are using assistive technologies and assistive features on a daily basis. So I'm getting those expertise together early, and then I think you just hit the nail on the head, Charlie. Run focus groups. Do regular testing throughout the process. So don't just leave it all right until the very end and then do the user acceptance testing then. Ideally, if you can, test in stages. I think they've been my key points.
Yeah. Excellent. We do have a question. If any of our viewers do have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. But we have a question that says, these insights have been great. Thank you. Doug mentioned that we do not need to test absolutely everything. With so many initiatives happening across a large organization and such limited resources, do you have any tips on prioritizing what to test?
I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, that when you go, right, what do we need to test? Clearly, we got to do, WCAG testing and making sure that meets that compliance. I think that, a website fundamentally has certain templates and components that are pretty standard. So, if they're implemented correctly, they'll work pretty well. But I think when it comes to complex things and things that are just a little bit harder to, it's not just a plain website, it's got a flow to it, or if it's got like some kind of sign-up process, or if it's a new device, or if it's something that's just a little bit harder, then I would prioritize those to be tested with people with lived experiences. And yeah, I guess it's all going to have to. it's all going to have to kind of like just, talk to your team members about this thing, and you're going to have a gut feel as well. Like, I think that something like this is going to need to have tested. If it's a new design system, for instance, there are totally new things, but I mean, like regular features, maybe not so much, But yeah, if it's something new, I think that's something that you're going to have to, talk to your team about and go, right, this is something that we're going to have to test with research.
Always test your calendars is going to be my input on that one.
Yeah,
Always test your date pickers.
date pickers. Oh, just have simple date pickers.
It's date pickers are the one thing that never passes.
No.
Even if they've passed, they're technically accessible. The old date picker is always something that comes up as problematic.
Charlie, and on that note, a good way to, I mean, ideally you want to get the date picker working perfectly, but like you said, pretty challenging to do. Make sure the person can just type the date in a standard format, and that format is explained, of course, straight into an edit box. So you've got an alternative there.
Yeah, absolutely. Multiple ways of doing things is really important. Just on a personal perspective, and this is just for a bit of my own personal research, Ben, when it comes to date pickers, do you prefer edit boxes that you type in, or drop downs or spinners where you can select the dates and days and months?
Look, I'm going to agree with you when you said have multiple options. Okay. I personally will type into the edit box. But I also have been a touch typer for a very long time, so there's no issues from that perspective. So I'm going to stick with multiple, and I know that's not probably the answer you're hoping for, Charlie. But the reason I say that is, let's say we had an edit box and you need to type in, you might find the next person. Say we'll stick with blindness again. You might find the next person that comes along is doing it on a touchscreen iPhone, for example, and for anyone who's not aware, when you're doing that totally blind and you're using the keyboard, the touchscreen keyboard, you basically put your finger around about where you think the letter or the number is you're looking for, and then you move your finger around if you're not quite on it to find it. And then there's various ways you can do it, but the default method is then you double tap when it announces the number you want. So you can picture a lot of people really struggle with that. They never quite feel comfortable with it, or it's very slow. So just highlighting the importance of being able to type it in manually, but also you might have a good accessible date picker, or like you said, Charlie, you might use combo boxes where you can choose your day, month, and the year.
And I think that's a really important thing to mention, Ben, is that when people are testing, when auditors are testing features like iPhone keyboards or Android keyboards, they tend to swipe letter by letter by letter by letter, rather than what I refer to as blind people using the search and destroy method. So people who are blind tend to sort of tap where they think things should be, and that goes for any element on the page, rather than swiping top down and then back up, because in my experience, people who are blind don't have time for going through every element on the page. So it's I think a really important thing for people who are testing to understand that people do use things in the most efficient manner they can, and that's often by just search and destroy, just kind of working out where it's roughly going to be and working it out from there.
Yeah, I just want to add something quickly.
Yes.
I used to be a designer, and I kind of had this dilemma, like, do I make something really cool and a really nice combo, or like a nice drop down, and then or do I use something that's just easy to like input, And designers are kind of like, I want to make something really cool, but there's sometimes you just got to make that decision. Like, it's not always about just like what cool, or something different or whatever. You got to stick to the patterns, and I know sometimes it feels a little bit boring, but it's that's the kind of thing that helps people navigate through things, and you can still design things through different ways. So yeah.
And that's so true. I think, sticking to known patterns and things that are known to be easy, and add your flair elsewhere, is probably the way to go to make it easier on the end user, because the end user doesn't work in the industry. They don't know this really cool thing that, you know, you've been thinking about for 4 weeks, and, you know, waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning going, oh, I'm going to make this and it's going to be amazing. And then you put it in front of someone and they have no idea what's
Been there. I've been there.
And it's hard, you know, as a designer, you want to be creative, you want to do
Yeah.
new things. But I guess you have to then stretch your brain a little bit and do new things that don't necessarily reinvent the wheel. We've got a comment from one of our webinar viewers saying, rule 1, always allow direct typing in, which I agree with. And picking from a calendar is bad for date of birth, better for flights. As a person of a certain age, yes, picking a date on a calendar when you're born pre-1980 is very, very hard.
Yeah.
And also to what Ben was saying before about you know, going into a store and using products again, and I wear reading glasses, but as a person of a certain age where my eyes aren't what they used to be, the number of times because I only wear my glasses when I'm reading or using a computer, I don't wear them out in the street. Number of times in a shopping center where I've had to look at ingredients or something, or something in a product, and really small text, really bad color contrast. The number of times I've had to get my phone out and zoom in just to do a little bit of a sneaky read of something is far too often these days. Do you have a question here from Joe? I noticed in the past that people are overwhelmed by TMI use screen readers, even though their site isn't an issue because it linearizes content. Are there other examples where people are using AT designed for one cohort and benefiting another? I can say dark mode is one that a lot of people use. A lot of people switch on dark mode not because they have low vision or any vision related disability. Again, me, I always get told my phone's on old lady mode because I pinch zoom the text on my text messages so I can read it a little bit easier without having to put my glasses on. I don't know if Ben or Doug have any other examples.
None jump to mind for me, Charlie. You use a great one, dark mode. Like, it definitely wasn't designed, I don't think, with accessibility specifically in mind, but it's definitely enhancing accessibility just for the general community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the too much information, I guess we have a pretty good content designers design team, and we try and, you know, make sure that when we do have to, you know, we curate the page in a certain way that it doesn't overwhelm screen readers, because, you know, and there's also like, what are those kind of labels that are going to read out as well? So our, you know, content designers also play a big part in making sure that the content is accessible to read out screen readers. So I think that's what Joe was meaning.
And
Doug,
sorry.
I was going to say, Doug, I appreciate you. I wasn't quite sure what that what initialism was. Okay, too much information. So I'll make a really quick comment. I'll throw back to you, Charlie. What Doug just said is so relevant. So you get a lot of really well-meaning developers, and I say that sincerely. A really good example I can think of just recently is Microsoft. So they've made massive steps forward in accessibility in recent years. We use a lot of their products in-house here at Guide Dogs, and I'm sure most other people on the call use Microsoft products too. So from a blindness point of view, they will often, and in fact quite recently, do that thing, too much information. So you go into Teams and you're looking in the file section, all of a sudden out of the blue, my screen reader is reading out to me that next to this particular folder I'm sitting on is a magenta folder with blah, blah, blah. And that's reading out as you go up and down. Now, it's arguably, some people may care what color the icon is next to their folder. Most people just want to hear the name of the folder so they can press enter and go in and find the files inside. So once again, I think we've highlighted the importance of user testing, because if we hadn't been working directly with Microsoft, we would have said to them, look, the vast majority of people don't want to know that superfluous information. They just want to hear the name of the file or the folder. And if you want to have features like that in there, because like I said, some people may appreciate it, make it optional so you can turn it off. So it's off by default. And if you want to opt in, great.
I have a contact at Microsoft if you like.
Great.
It's so true though. And people do try to be well-meaning and then, sometimes over-engineer things. We saw it creep in a little bit with a few projects last year where a success tick on a page would be, instead of just saying tick, it would be white tick with a bold white tick with a
Yes.
green circle. And it's like now you've just read an entire chapter to someone who just wants to know that whatever they were doing was successful.
Correct.
So it's that, and it does come from a well-meaning point of view.
Yeah.
But again, I guess it also shows how important it is to speak to end users and not just take an idea of or a whisper that, well, people who are blind should get the same information as everyone else. So you should explain the color and the size and the boldness and everything else within that, because I guess from a visual point of view, when I look at a success tick, my brain will say tick. It won't say, bold white tick off to the right with a green circle and a black outline. It doesn't process that information verbally, which is what we're forcing screen readers to do. Just my opinion on that. All right.
The good one.
We're running close on time. I wanted to throw in one more question here that has come up again a lot. Is there's a lot of talk of AI testing and automation. So there's a little bit of an undercurrent whisper of, well, pretty soon we won't need to test with people because we'll have so much knowledge of people and how they do things that we'll just be able to have AI test everything. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think AI will ever replace real users in research? I don't mind who goes first on that one.
I'll go first. So we do have a few products which have AI baked in when it comes to automated testing. But I mean, our policy is stipulates that we do automated testing and we do manual testing. So that's just one of the things that we will always do. And as much as the testers would love to, just chuck it into the AI and test it like that, we'll always I'll always push back and say, look, we have to do manual testing. It's just part of our pillars of accessibility. So yeah, it's a non-negotiable for us. I don't think AI will ever. I mean, it could get there, but I don't know if we'll ever trust it completely.
No, same. Ben, what are your thoughts?
From me, Charlie, if it's non-negotiable at guide dogs as well, manual testing is essential. The AI testing is picking up far less than you would expect. I can't foresee a time, at least anytime soon, but we'll just be relying on AI. And if guide dogs do go down that route, I'll leave. So.
Shots fired. They would have heard that too. They would never let you leave, Ben. And it's so true. It's like, I guess as a guide dog saying that, your guide dog could be a robot. People and guide dogs are far more than just the function that they're there for. And I think there's so much complexity. I don't believe that AI will ever take over people until it, I guess, takes over our entire world, but that's a dystopian talk for another webinar.
I never thought of that, Charlie, but is that what they're saying? Like using
Yes.
Spot, that Boston Dynamics dog to be like the new guide dog.
Oh, I hope not, because
No, yeah.
in a previous organization that I worked at, we did have one of those dogs, and literally all it did was drip oil on the carpet. So it was brought in by our parent company, and it literally just leaked oil on the carpet. That's all it did. So I think for guide dogs we're pretty good. Ben, your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's interesting because we are working on a robotic guide, but we don't foresee that being a replacement at all. It's for those people who can't use a cane or a guide dog for whatever reason. So yeah, guide dogs will remain for sure, as well as manual testing.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Never have a robot dog sit on your lap or be your friend.
Bit heavy.
No, I prefer the real thing. All right, that brings us to time. Thank you so much for everyone who is watching out there, and thank you to Doug and Ben for joining me in this conversation. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks,
That
Charlie.
was fantastic.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. All the best, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.